Shut up and sit down.
Boom. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Couch Live. This is Dope and Dharma, the Couch Live edition of Dope and Dharma, here on WOKB 1680 AM in the Central Florida area, and of course 100.7 FM here in the Central Florida area. And I'm the street certified dope Dr. Louis Delgado here with you, along with my partner for the last who knows how many years, but this show's been on since 1999. The Dharma guy. What's up, brother? Trinity Phillips.
Howdy.
Howdy. We got a howdy now.
It's the first thing that came out of my mouth.
Is it? I like the trim. I like the beard trim, Trinity.
Yeah, man, it's been a few weeks. My wife and kids were not happy about it, but
yeah, they don't like you cutting it down, right? They want you.
They do not. No, they want it longer. Yeah, I don't know why, but
I still think one of these days you just got to freak them all out, Trinity. I think you just got to take the whole thing off.
I have no interest in that.
Seriously, what are they going to do, Trinity?
I am no, for me, I'm just not a non-beard guy. Like I haven't.
But it'll come back in a week. Who cares?
Yeah, I'm not into it myself. But I
Who
hear
cares?
It would freak them out though. They would be my wife in particular would be very unhappy with me.
Don't you want to see your face at least one last time before it's all wrinkled?
Nope, not even a little bit.
Not even. You don't like your face?
Don't care.
I like your face.
I just doesn't even really. This all started from laziness. It was never like a point. It was just I didn't feel like shaving anymore, so I just let it grow. And the next thing I know, I had this massive like lumberjack beard. I had it before the kids were, calling it cool.
Well, not only that, you're a bald guy that doesn't have to be bald. You actually bald yourself.
Oh God, I wish I was bald, man. I get so tired of shaving this like every week, man. Come on,
sense. Trinity. You make no sense. There's guys out there wishing they had your hair, and you literally chop it off.
I cannot stand hair like on the head. I don't like styling it. I don't like trying to do it. I don't like it. The last time I had it was for the Now Matters More Foundation. It was our very first dinner, I think it was. Yeah. And it was like a last minute thing. I didn't have a haircut, so my hair and I tried to style it. It did not do what I wanted it to do, and it was frustrating. I saw the pictures of the event, and I hated the way it looked. And I just you know what? There's a way to solve this. Hacked it off and haven't had it since.
He had good hair, people. He had good hair. When I met him, he had this Slim Shady thing going on. This little, you had this little rooster thing right here. This little blonde piece right there. It looked cool, man.
Well, my Dharma guy logo even was back when I had the mohawk.
Well, there you go. The mohawk.
Yeah,
remember the mohawk.
Yeah. Just don't like dealing with hair anymore. It's so much nicer. It cuts my shower times in half. I don't have to worry about. I literally just wake up and walk out the door. I don't have to worry about styling it, make it look a certain way. I love it.
He takes the time to shave his head, but not his face. It makes all the sense in the world, Trinity.
Well, this you don't have to style. It's just there. With your head, you actually have to style it. You can't just let it.
And that's what I hate about shaving my face. I hate the labor of shaving my face.
Yeah.
Anyway, this goes right into what we're talking about today. My way. It's all about my way. For those who don't know, the Couch Live here we are Dope and Dharma, and this is the Couch Live edition. Meaning we talk about addiction, recovery, mental health issues, all that kind of stuff. I am a certified addictions professional. He is a spiritual guide and master trainer. So this is the stuff we talk about on this show. And my way came up because you were listening to Sinatra. Is that what it was? You were listening to Sinatra?
Usher. I was listening to some Usher.
Usher?
Yeah. It's the latest. Well, not the latest. It's old, man. I think it was his first album, actually, was My Way. Good album. But
see, the shows are age.
Or Old Blue Eyes. Blue Eyes.
Yeah, I think Sinatra. You think Usher.
I was never a big Sinatra fan. I've heard it, but I was never into that. I wanted to be.
Yeah, but of all the songs on earth, this is probably his best song. My Way is probably the best Sinatra song of all time. I mean, some people say New York. No, My Way. I mean, come on. So much so that they used it in the Summer Olympics, which made no sense, by the way. I didn't understand the reference in the Summer Olympics because the lady that sung it, she looked like she was going to a funeral, and then she sung it. It was like, are we putting it to bed? I mean, like that? Is that what we're doing with the Olympics? We're killing it.
I did not watch a single bit of the Summer Olympics.
You missed out. You missed out.
I normally do. I'm an Olympics junkie, but for some reason, dude, I just could not be bothered this time.
Oh, Trinity, what's wrong with you?
I didn't watch a single bit of it.
Trinity.
I don't even know who won. I didn't even watch highlights, to be honest.
All
I
right,
know
well,
nothing about it. Might as well just not have happened, and I would have the same amount of information.
I'm not going to tell you.
I couldn't be bothered to care.
Don't even bother asking me because I'm not going to tell you.
Because I don't care. I don't know why.
I'm going to tell you.
I do, man. I normally do. I'm normally like super into it, but this time I don't care.
Look, Clara. Clara on
Claire says
Facebook
me
Live.
neither.
She says me neither. So
Yeah,
she apparently she didn't care about it either.
I hope that doesn't happen with the World Cup coming.
Oh,
because I'm a big World Cup guy too, and I really hope that I'm not like.
What about the little kids? Do you watch any of the Little League World Series? Do you do any? Do you support the kids?
No, not even a little bit. No.
All right, Trinity, you and I can't be friends today.
I don't watch anything baseball. Period. Like I don't like baseball. It's boring.
Trinity, come on, man.
Yeah, I'm not a baseball guy.
These little kids. These are future.
Not my little kids.
Baseball players.
Two things I don't care about: other people's kids and baseball. Sorry.
I got you on that. You got me on that one. I'm good. All right. So my way, Trinity, and the reason we're talking about it is because, these. I think I'm officially on the other side of these generations, man. I'm officially 2 generations old, right? And what I mean by that is like there's 2 generations below me now, right? Yeah. At least, and with each one that comes, the more I'm that old guy, dude. I just don't get it anymore. I'm the get off my lawn kind of guy. Instinctually, I may not always respond that way, but to anybody out there under like 25 years old, I seriously don't get you. I have to work. I have to literally work to understand you. I can admit that. I really can. But at least I'm doing that.
Yeah.
I'm going to give myself a little pat on the back, Trinity. At least I'm making an effort to understand them rather than, just ignore them. But now I understand why when we were younger, and I'm 1 generation older than you.
We're both X, though.
No, you're not X. We went through this.
We have. It depends on which one you follow.
You're the only guy that wants to be older than you are.
No, I don't
not
really
X.
care. I'm just
You're
saying.
A millennial.
Okay.
You're on the edge. Is it fair to say you're on the edge?
Yeah, I'm on the far end of one bracket.
So like if we were talking horoscopes, it'd be like, you're like in retrograde or something.
Cusp is what they would call that.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it depends. Some people say it starts in 80. Some people say it starts in 81.
And there's Hank on Facebook Lives. It's me
I'm
too. I'm trying to too, Louis. Pop culture.
I'm in the beginning of 81. For some scales, that's the very end of X. Right. For other scales, it's the very beginning of.
But I'm 69. But I'm 69, and so I'm deep in X. You know what I mean? I'm
no, you're definitely like in the beginning part of X. For sure.
I'm X. So here's the issue. The issue is when you hear people talk about history, like everyone in history is like an idiot, and like they don't know what they're talking about, and everything apparently that we did or our whole existence is like comes from. I mean, they make it sound like cavemen that didn't understand anything. We didn't empathize with anything. There was no true understanding of anything. No, Claire said, I'm not 69. I was born in 69, Claire. Oh, boy. That'd be sad if I was actually 69. I'm not 69. I was born in 69. But the point is that I now get it. When we'd be like, Dad, you don't even understand. You don't get it. I remember telling my dad, this is the way it is in the United States, Dad. No, this is the way they are here. My whole thing wasn't about generations. My whole thing was trying to tell my parents that they just didn't understand how the United States was.
Will Smith had a whole song. Parents
still don't understand. Yeah, the dorkiest rap song that actually won when NWA should have won that year, but NWA wasn't even nominated because that's when the world really was racist. You know what I mean? But now, if you listen to youth right now, they talk as if they're in the 60s.
Yes.
They talk as if we never even existed. Like there was no 70s revolution. There was no 80s revolution. There was no 90s revolution. They talk as if it went from 60s to 2024.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like they think they're in another time. Yeah. And we're just watching it going like, what? Like, do you not realize how much we fought for the changes that you get lucky enough to appreciate? And that includes efforts in mental health and recovery. that includes that,
Right.
right?
Yeah, it's yeah. Well, the thing that I find interesting about that is not only do they think that they're, back in like the '60s at the moment,
Right.
but they also look at us and they forget that like we weren't just born old. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like
Yeah.
I have kids now that like my youngest is
Right.
13.
Right.
The only two in the house at the moment right now are 13 and soon to be 15.
Mhm.
And when I talk to them or even their friends, it's
Right.
like they have no concept of the fact that I wasn't born an old dad. It's like,
Right.
no, I was a kid. Like all the same things you guys are dealing with, I dealt with them as well.
Yeah. What's
In a different perspective because I didn't have
right.
internet and things of that nature, but I
Right.
still dealt with the same, frustrations, insecurities, and all these other
Right.
things that you're going through. And they just,
Right.
it doesn't, they can't compute that concept.
Well, not only do they think they invented all the drugs that we got high on, they think they invented the only way that
I
you
never
can
did.
recover from the drugs that we got high on. No, not you, but people in recovery. I mean, I'm
Sure.
just saying, there's this whole like we don't even understand drugs. Now, look, I get it. We got beat by our parents and you didn't. I get it. Some of you still got beat by your parents, but with us, like not only did our parents beat us, but like our neighbors were allowed to beat us. Our teachers were allowed to beat us. The cops were allowed to beat us. I think everybody hit me. I got hit by everybody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
My school used to do it. The
Oh,
school had the
I
authority
got
to
hit by
use the
every teacher.
paddle. Yeah.
Look, we all know that's why me and teachers, like when everybody praises teachers, who's the first one to raise their hand and says, I'm not jumping on that bandwagon. And it's not to get on all you teachers. It's just that I got hit by every single teacher. So please don't ask me to appreciate them, or don't ask me to go, oh, teachers are fantastic. They weren't to me.
Yeah.
Talk about a group of people that didn't understand mental health.
I can't imagine allowing like teachers to spank my kids right now. Like I
Right.
can't even imagine
Right.
allowing that to happen.
So here's random Rick from what is that? Twitch?
That's
What is that?
YouTube Live.
YouTube. Oh no, not the one. That's exactly where we're going today. Random Rick. That's my point. Is trying to bridge that so we don't sound like those people, because that's what I'm trying to say. I want to naturally sound like the old people of when I was a young kid, and I'm working not to. I'm really
I think it's
trying hard
impossible
not
though.
to.
I think it's impossible because the hubris of the youth, man, and we had
It's
it
so
too.
hard, Trinity. It's so hard to listen to people talk about their problems, and you're like, that's a problem to you? It's like watching a person with a splinter acting like they got castrated. You know what I mean? It's like, you got a splinter, bro.
Well, it's funny you brought this up though because I was dealing with
Fortnite is the bridge.
Fortnite is the bridge. Yeah,
I don't even understand.
I
don't even get that reference.
I'll do Destiny. I won't do Fortnite though. My kid does Fortnite.
Okay.
No, but it's interesting. You brought this up earlier today when we talked about it. It was because
all right, help me.
I had a similar moment to this, like not quite exactly the same, but in the same ballpark, if you will.
Okay.
So my son is in boxing.
Okay.
And he had a sparring session last week, and when I got there, it just so happened that these other like couple kids were in the gym this week as well,
Right.
and they're like from Team USA, and they were like their trainers were in there with them. It was like a separate group from the ones that my son was with.
Right.
And so it was quite intense. I mean, these are Team USA. Like these kids are like miniature professional boxers.
Yeah, like
and
little future Olympians that you don't want.
Yeah, man.
I get you.
It was intense. It was hyped up. The whole environment was much different than it normally is. And so my son was getting ready to go into spar with there was 3 kids that were going to spar. My son, this other boy, and this little girl. So the 3 of them were like kind of taking turns sparring with one another. And as I'm watching it, the one thing that kind of stuck out to me the most, well, I'm gonna give you what I said to myself, and then what I said
yes,
outwardly,
because it's always different.
Yes, what I said to myself was, "This generation is soft,"
Okay.
and what I said to them was, they don't have the same, they didn't grow up the same way, so they don't have that same chip on their shoulders,
Yeah. Okay.
but to me, what I wanted to say was that they're soft, man. They don't have that fight. I was just watching them spar, and they didn't have that level of intensity. They didn't have that anger inside of them, that like I did and my friends did. And so, yeah, as an older generation, it's hard sometimes to watch, but at the same token, I get it, right? Like they have, it's the new generation. They have different ways of doing things.
Right.
I expect them to have some hubris. It's the hubris that gets things done, right? Like they haven't been jaded yet. They haven't had enough failures to where they don't they're timid or they're afraid of losses. So they try new things, which means new things get invented and new ways of doing things. And I think that's awesome.
Okay.
Having said that, they also lack the wisdom though that comes with some of those losses. And I think that's where the gap is, if you will,
Right.
in the fact of trying to rein in some of
Right.
their enthusiasm, but not killing it to the point where they're jaded. I think that's the hard part.
All
I
right, but
see
hold
Random Rick
on,
is saying
because
some things.
I agree with Random Rick right here. This is where I was going to go with it. I agree. The World War II generation. So I'm going to say the Boomers saw Generation X as soft
Yeah.
with our Nintendos and BMX bikes.
Oh,
Exactly.
dude, when I went to go see my grandpa, he used to make fun of me so much because I had
Yeah.
an earring. Oh
yeah. No,
Oh,
no.
yeah.
They thought we were,
Yes.
but here's the difference. They called us soft, but they didn't use
Yes.
those words.
No, they
didn't
would
use
hit
those.
us.
They
Like-
didn't use those nice little kind little
No.
words. At least, like, here's the big difference. Trinity, you just said I thought it, but I didn't
Yeah.
say it.
No, they used to say it. They used to punch me
Right.
in the chest, man.
They would use
Like,
words to us that were like traumatizing.
yeah, and they would hit us.
And hit us.
They would you just need to be hit in the chest, boy, and they'd just give me a little wallop.
Yeah,
I'm like,
I'll
it
tell
would
you,
hurt
man.
when a grown man
So-
hits you in the chest.
So I almost feel cheated. So to our grandfathers, we were soft, and then to our young people, we're too aggressive. And I'm thinking, how did I go from soft to aggressive? And I felt like I missed
Yeah.
something. What's
Yeah.
the reality here? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
so here's why I'm bringing it up today, because when it comes to getting high and when it comes to partying, there's always this constant of, people just want to have a good time. I get it. But then when it comes to the recovery part, or the like it's getting to like not good for you part, the conversations like get more and more difficult. Like the older I get, I realize that I have to accept a lot more of where they're at, because we now know so much more about how to help somebody in recovery. You got to meet them where they're at, right? But sometimes when you're meeting somebody where they're at and you hear, if and this is if they're not in a really horrible place, but they're kind of getting there,
Sure.
you can't challenge them the same way before. Like you can't confront the same way, because it's almost like you can traumatize somebody with your words now, right? Whereas that was never even a thing. Getting traumatized by words, that wasn't a thing, right? It was sticks and stones can hurt my bones, but words will never hurt me kind of thing, right? But now it's, words are the worst that could ever be, or intent is the worst. I mean, it's like, it gets a little bit different now.
I worry more about supporting them than I think
Right.
anybody ever worried about supporting me
Hmm.
when I was a kid. Like, matter of fact, the sparring session, there was some things that took place during the sparring session that I felt, could be addressed. And
Mhm.
and I talked to him about them and what I saw, trying to give what I thought to be constructive criticism, and he was taking it kind of rough.
Right.
And there was a part of me, the old school part of me, wanted to be like, "You'll be fine, rub some dirt
Right.
on it,"
Right.
But then the father part of me, like the newer version, I guess,
Right.
was thinking, all right, I'm not trying to crush him. I don't want to crush his dreams. I don't want this to be like a moment that he looks back on
Yeah.
in therapy when he's 40 years old. Time, oh, my dad,
Right.
So on the way home, I readdressed my thoughts a little bit on it.
Right.
Like, during the time I was kind of quiet. I let the trainers and everybody else kind of have their discussion with him.
Right.
But on the way home, I gathered myself and I thought about everything that I said before I said it. I tried to be firm. I'm not going to lie to the boy. So I told him exactly what I saw. But I also tried to do it in a way, keeping in mind, I'm not trying to like ruin this for him.
Right.
I'm not trying to come down and be harsh. And I don't think I personally or our generation got that.
Right.
I don't think people were thinking to us, hey, how is this going to impact them 20, 30, 40 years from now?
Well, here's the good thing, though, because like you and I, we work to empathize a little bit differently. And I think that's important, because we got to remember, people, any adult out there listening to this right now, these young people aren't going to go back and live in our world. So they don't have to know how to live in the 70s and 80s. They need to learn how to live in the 2030s that are coming up. And their 2030s are a lot different than our 80s. So they don't need that same of what we think they may need. They're very different. They're in a different world. It's a different existence. It's their world we're now in. It's not our world we're in. Go ahead and put that up there. Put that up there. Because when you just laugh out of the blue without showing the people what the comment
So
is.
Random Rick on YouTube Live says empathy is for women and toddlers. Oh man, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
So we're like in that new realm. We're always trying to like be emotionally available. And
It
I
is
think
hard though.
what's it's very hard because the emotion I wish to show sometime is just like,
Yes.
different,
Yes.
right? But at least as good parents or as good adults, we're trying to. I think those of us that are trying to do the right thing, we're trying to get you. We're trying to understand you. We have to. We have to. We can't just sit here and think about, well, in my day, and you got to be tougher, and because maybe they don't. Just maybe they don't. I don't know. I'd like to believe that they don't have to have the same. What was it you said, hubris? I'm going to say chutzpah. We're going to use all these words that nobody knows anymore. I mean, at least they're not canceled, right? Chutzpah. Like you never heard people say that. They don't need the same.
Yes, it's usually old
Cojones.
Jewish
I would say
men,
like
but, yeah.
cojones. I was going to say a Mexican word, but I don't know how much of a Mexican population.
Hey,
we
well,
have.
you want to speak Yiddish, man? Go for it.
I don't know. I just figure that's more known than my Mexican language. So what I'm saying is there's a lot of stuff that I think is just hard to relate to with younger people unless we actually make the effort to do it. Now, here's the difference, though, young people, is that we have been young before, so we do know what it's like to have a certain ideology and then it adapt throughout the age. That's what we have that you can't have, right? Wisdom does come later. Wisdom is one of those things that you do get from some experience, and then you got to be mindful enough to kind of run it back in your head and then see if you can adapt your mentality. Wisdom is not guaranteed with age because there's a lot of older people that's still just as dumb today as they were, when they were 5 years old. Wisdom is something that you have to adapt, and you have to I guess allow it to grow, and you have to nourish it. And then that way you get the wisdom to know I was wrong here, or maybe not for that moment I was wrong, but you can't just blanket that kind of response to everything that is that way. For instance, you can't smack everything out of somebody, right? But that doesn't mean that a smack doesn't have its place. It just doesn't have its place with individuals that you may think it needs. What I'm saying is sometimes it's a mental smack, it's a verbal smack, or it's an emotional smack, and that stuff can still be traumatizing to somebody. It can still hurt somebody equally. And I would have never believed that. Because what is the old joke back in the day that if you think words are the same thing as physical, then let me start pounding on you. You tell me if you'd rather me just say it to you or smack you for real. Seriously, if Mike Tyson's punching you in the face, I think you'd rather him call you a name. I just think you'd rather him call you a name.
Of course.
But okay, I'm going to go with it. If you say the words are equally as bad as Mike Tyson hitting you, okay, because there are individuals out there that will have the kind of trauma in their life that they would say, oh, no, I'd rather you hit me any day because I can take that. You hit me and it's like I could take that. I deaden that kind of pain. Yeah. But that emotional pain that mom gave me or dad gave me or that person when they injured me gave me, that is a deeper pain. And so I have to get that. I get that. And I understand that. I have some of those pains that were deeper than physical scars. Well, look how we joke about the physical. I can joke about that now. I can joke about, all right, I got hit. Sure. But it's not every day you joke about, yeah, I got sexually molested, and let me joke about that. That's not right. a joking manner in my book. You know what I mean? That's a true painful moment, right? Yeah. So that's something that I think that it requires a more deeper conversation. Whereas when it comes to the physical, I was like, I can forgive my brother, for what he did. I can maybe not all the teachers, but maybe at least the coaches.
Well, they heal differently too, though.
They heal differently,
right? The physical one kind of heals on its own without any real work. It's just time. Whereas the emotional ones or the internal ones, sometimes they don't ever heal. You have to actively heal those, and I think that's something that we, especially as young men, we're not adept at doing.
Right. And I think one of the issues is that the using comes in so many more flavors, I should say now. Like the escaping, the hiding, there's so much more to use to escape. Like he referenced Nintendos earlier. Sure. There's much more than Nintendos now. There's the phone has so much in it that you can use to escape and go somewhere else, just like a drug. You can, and you can imbibe it just like a drug, and you can miss it just like, you can go into withdrawals from it just like a drug. There's so many more liquids than ever before. There's so many different flavors of substances that you can use than ever before. And then some substances out there without even wanting to, like this fentanyl crisis that we have, one time and you're done. Like, I don't remember people dying from one-time use before. I mean, you had to work to overdose.
I remember being threatened with that.
Yeah, they used to say it, but we all laughed it off, right?
Yeah.
Like, they'll poison your weed. There's, and you're like,
well, they're doing it
now. And now,
yeah,
we actually have evidence of some people doing that. It's like, what they do? Why would you put something so expensive in something?
I will say though that there was a study recently came out about phones that the average person checks their phone something like 380 times a day or something like that.
Insane. That's insane. That's so
crazy.
obsessive. That's so obsessive. So here, that's exactly where I'm going. Like how obsessive compulsive, all the things that are obsessive compulsive, we're actually feeding them. We're creating a higher obsession society. We're creating a more compulsive society, yet a lot less structure. So here's the question. So when you break down structure and call all structure bad, or if it's someone else's structure, it's bad, your own personal idea of structure, like tell me when's the last time you heard this, Trinity? My truth.
Yeah.
Like I hear my truth and it just drives me crazy because it's like, you mean your perspective. And then you just sound like a smart aleck if you say it. But that's what I'm thinking. When you say my truth, I'm thinking, okay, you mean your perspective. Because truth is just truth, right?
Yeah.
But we all have perspectives on truth, right?
Yeah.
So when you hear my truth, what do you hear? What does it do to you?
Well, it irritates me because.
Thank you very much, Random Rick. We'll see you later. He had to take off.
Yeah. No, it irritates me because that is the thing is I know what they mean, but I don't think they know what they mean. Right. What they mean is, like you said, my perspective and how I interpreted what just happened.
Right.
But I think in their mind, they genuinely, the younger generations that I've interacted with, even some of the older generation, they truly think that their perspective is the truth. Like it's an objectively true thing. It's like, well, no, what was it? Feelings aren't facts. I mean, just because you felt that certain way, like doesn't mean that was the truth, and I see with my kids, like back in, they don't do it as much now, but I saw many times, especially when they were younger, that they would fight over something. And like I would watch it happen. Like I would watch my son like bump into her or my daughter or something, and she would turn around and go off on him. And I would like, dude, no, he didn't. He didn't accidentally. And I watched it happen. But in her mind, the narrative that she told herself was that he purposely, bumped into her or whatever. Right. And she yelled at him as if that was the objective truth. There was no room for error. There was no room for maybe I misread that. Maybe it didn't occur to her that he had a perspective that might have been different than hers. Right. And I think that that's what irritates me with what I see being pushed in today's world, not necessarily just by the younger individuals, but they're growing up with it. Right. So it's like the older individuals know better and they're pushing it, and the younger ones are just eating it up. And that's the only world that they know. And it's like, it's frustrating to me because to me as a father, it's setting them up for failure. Right. Because at the end of the day, your perspective, nobody cares. They just don't. Right. Your friends and family might, but the proverbial they, the world doesn't care. Mm-hmm. So this notion that somehow the way you feel about something overrides what the rest of us are dealing with. It's not true. It's not helpful.
Right.
And so, yeah, it irritates me. But like with the whole my way thing, though, is when you try to tell them that, you in today's world, you kind of get dismissed. Like, oh, well, of course you think that way. But like, no, there's still true, right? So like this notion that the world is a harsh place, that's not my truth, and that's not old way of thinking. That's the reality, right? Like you might not know that now. Like we learned that early on when we were kids, because I had to deal with bullies and there was no zero tolerance policies and things of that nature. I mean, there was
schoolyard. You didn't have a safe space?
No safe spaces. If you cried, you were considered weak and they would just attack you. So like you had to learn early on how to survive, and you learned early on this is a dog eat dog world in certain scenarios. Whereas in today's generation, they're being much more coddled in many more places. And so they have this delusion that they think that they live in, nothing bad's going to happen, or we're being hyperbolic when we tell them, hey, there's bad people out there who will do bad things, and you got to be. They don't comprehend that, and they think that that's just old way of thinking. But like people still murder today, like that's not an old thing. People still rob and steal, like and take advantage and stuff. So just because you've been sheltered in this environment doesn't mean that the world isn't still that way. And so I think that that's why we as adults or as older ones struggle,
Right.
is because we know that truth is sitting out there waiting on them, and we want to do everything we can to prepare them for it.
And I think the bullying still exists. It's more like cyberbullying, and it's
Yeah,
a little
it's
bit
nowhere near
intense.
what it was, man. Like
But instead of comparing it, it's equally as painful though. It's equally as harmful. I mean, if you're a young person today and you post a picture of yourself and you got like all these people that randomly just say, "Oh, you got an ugly nose," or "Look at your head," or I mean
yeah,
that's pretty tough.
to an extent, I would agree with that. To the extent that I would disagree with that is like my kids don't really use social media much, and a lot of their kids don't. It's more of a one-sided thing. They'll watch like TikTok videos and scroll through, but there's not a lot of posting of their own videos of their own pictures. It's more or less voyeuristic, I guess.
Mm-hmm. A
So
lot
they
of
don't have to
voyeurs.
go through the day-to-day fear of I'm going to go to school tomorrow and get my butt kicked.
Mhm.
I think those days are kind of not
Well,
around
like
as
I said,
much
it's a
anymore.
different kind of bullying. Like I
Yeah.
said, but they might consider how you talk to them as bullying. What I'm
Oh,
saying is
probably.
the
I'm
perspective is
aggressive.
different. Yeah,
Sure.
in other words, same words, same emotion, same feeling, but it's just attached in a place maybe that we're not used to seeing it.
Sure.
Right? It's wearing a different suit, and it's like uh, I think that's kind of what we're being mindful today of saying. This my way thing is, look, you're not raised in a vacuum, people. You didn't just appear on Earth at your age. You came from everything that previously existed. You're a piece of that. You're an accumulation of a lot of other things that have occurred, including in your own family. You may not agree with your family. You may think your family is clueless. You may think all the people around you are clueless, and you're the only one. The only person that kind of gets it. But the only reason you can even think that is that you were given that gift somewhere along the way to feel as individual as you are, to feel as however you are currently feeling. You didn't just come out of the sky and all of a sudden make an assessment on everybody. You didn't create yourself. You didn't raise yourself. I think that's part of the stuff that's a little frustrating is that people think they've just raised themselves. There's a lot of people that all of a sudden just feel like, I'm like this because I did it. You know, I did this to me. I educated myself. I looked at no. There's a lot of paved paths now. You're not walking through the jungles. Can you imagine like if setting foot in Florida at the time when the Spaniards got here, like when my family first got here before we
Ponce
left
de
and came
Leon.
back. Yeah, when we first got here in the 1400s or whatever, 1500. I mean, can you imagine walking in these swamps out here, Trinity, like with
No,
metal on?
no,
No,
absolutely not.
just to walk up and down the beach alone would be difficult, but now to come inland. But now after there's roads, I mean, it's easier. It's a lot easier. You
Yeah.
can drive. Oh, there's a 75, there's a 95, there's an I-4. As much as we don't like it, it's still there. Like there's the paths have been created. So even the path that you're on, no matter how old you are, whatever path you're on, you didn't. It wasn't a non-path. There was somebody else that walked it before you. The thoughts that you're having, somebody else has thought it. The feelings that you're having, someone else has felt it. The things that you're doing and the ways somebody else has done it. The key is to accept that and find somebody that you can learn from. But you got to be teachable. Just like we had to be teachable in order to keep progressing in your life, you got to become teachable at some point. You can't just always be the first, and nobody gets me, nobody understands. Because if you're feeling that way, that's a sign of low self-esteem. That's a sign of pain. And I don't want you to be in pain. And I don't want you to be sitting in some low self-esteem where you don't feel like you can come up from it. There's always somebody who, if you just offer them the opportunity to be heard and you allow them to hear you, you might gain some wisdom from the deal and just get out of whatever emotion or state you're in right now a lot better and healthier than just sitting in it waiting for someone to say it and to think it exactly the way you're saying it.
Yeah, I think so. The two things that popped in my head while you were saying that, one of
Mm-hmm.
them was kind of just a funny, I guess, anecdotal thing,
Okay.
and that is, I remember the moments that happened to me when I was
Mm-hmm.
younger.
Right.
It also happens to my kids now. And do you remember the first time you heard a song when you were younger of like an artist that you really liked and you really looked up to, and you heard the song and you're like, "Yo, this is a great song," whatever. and then you heard the song that they sampled,
Oh yeah.
and then you're
Oh
like,
yeah.
wait a minute, what?
Yeah.
Like, I remember for me,
Hmm.
I knew sampling took place. I wasn't completely oblivious, but I would have sworn like this is an original song. And then all of a sudden, like years later, I'll hear something. I'm like, wait a minute. And then I look into it, realize like, no, they sampled it from somebody 30 years before. What? And so like
Hmm.
my kids even now will hear music from somebody, and they are now sampling from my generation's like
Right.
oldies.
Right.
So like I know the songs like when they originated. So I was like, no, actually that was taken from somebody else. No, they're not. And I pull it up to them, and it
Right.
blows their mind
Right.
that person that they're listening to that they look up to so much didn't create that.
Right.
It's like, yeah, it was here before, long before they were. And the person who I heard it from would probably sampled it from somebody else
Right.
20 years before them. Um,
And
but
look, even not just sampling, even just redoing it.
yeah,
Even if you're not sampling it,
sure.
even if you just take a song and redo it, there's a lot of old blues songs that were,
Oh yeah,
they got stolen. But
of
in
course.
my opinion, they made it to where we can listen to it differently. You know what
Sure,
I mean? We can
sure,
digest it. Like we probably it wasn't getting digested the other way, right?
sure,
Or they didn't have the ability to put it out there to the masses the other way.
sure. But the other thing that came to mind when you were talking, I guess, and I don't know if this has the conundrum I'm in right now, thinking about it, is I don't know if it's a youth thing or if it's a generational thing. And what I mean by that is, does every individual go through this process as long as they are currently because of youth, or is it just it's a different time? And that I don't know. And what I've noticed is, it seems to me from what I've just looking around, like
Mm,
we're spending a lot more time in lower level thinking these
mm,
days than we used to. Lower level thinking obviously is a normal thing, right? Like you start out with impulsivity and reactionary and stuff, but then you start to eventually kind of, as you get older, you go through experiences and you learn more and you start thinking higher level stuff. But it seems like there's an awful lot of time spent in lower level thinking these days. There's not a lot of critical thinking. There's not a lot of like observing things and realizing other people have thoughts and perspectives and stuff. It's like it's almost like the lizard brains have taken over. And it's like, and I feel as if the I feel like it's encouraged. So
mm,
I don't personally know. I don't think it's a youth thing. I think to an extent it's a youth thing, but I think the generation that they're currently in, I think society is actually kind of promoting it and pushing it. To whereas when we grow up, it was kind of frowned upon, right? Like if you spent too much time being reactionary and impulsive and things of that nature, you were kind of like society would kind of slap you on the wrist and let you know that that's probably not a good way. It was frowned upon. To whereas it's almost being celebrated now, and it's almost being promoted. And so it's like it's hard for me as a father sometimes to try to get my kids to understand there's a higher level way of thinking when, first of all, lower level just feels good, it's more instinctual. And then when you look around with other people, well, they're
mm.
kind of promoting it. So I think that's a key difference. I think that I
Okay.
struggle with personally.
Okay. I think when I think along the lines that you're talking about, and again, that's Trinity's perspective. You may disagree with it. Feel free to share your own, but that's Trinity's perspective. When I think about it, is I think the sacrifice is very different. And to be honest with you, I spent a lot of time thinking about like what is it about the generations before us that we didn't get their sacrifice? Because
Sure,
I feel like I do. I feel like I get it, and I feel like I appreciate it, but do I appreciate it enough? I'm like, did I show them that I appreciate it enough? Do I express it enough? Am I just now at that place where I want a little appreciation, and therefore I'm appreciating it more? Because I don't think I appreciated it as much when I was young either. I think I was
right,
just too busy just kind of figuring my own world out. You know what I mean? And figuring my own stuff out. And I think it was normal to feel that the previous generations just didn't get it. They didn't understand.
sure,
Whereas they didn't need to. Here's what look. There's only several emotions, man. There's not a lot of them, right? And whatever they experience, they still experience those emotions. It may
sure,
not have been exactly the way I did. It may not been colored the same way or within the same lines, within the same boundaries, but it was basically the same emotions. And I think that when I'm thinking about this for younger people, I think that's the key. It may not sound exactly the same, but the feelings are still there. I
sure.
do know what hurt feels like. I do know what
Yeah,
sadness feels like. I do know what feeling unheard feels like. Right. I do know what feeling misunderstood feels like. And those are the basics. I'm saying I think we got to keep it. to the real basics, and then that allows us to let them know, I get that.
Sure.
Do I fully understand why you chose that stimulation to bring out that outcome in you? I may not understand that, but I understand the emotion and the feeling.
Yeah.
I may have required a different stimulation to get there or to have that feeling, but I understand the feeling. And I think that's the crux of it, right?
Sure.
That's the real down deep of it for me. Is
Yeah.
that I may not always understand the path that how they got there, and don't always agree to how they got there, but once they're there, okay, I that we can all identify with. I think we can all identify with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's what I used for the whole boxing thing with my son.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
I know what he was feeling at that moment
Mm-hmm.
was embarrassment, the feeling of not good enough, not
Yeah.
being valued on what your productivity is
Right.
versus, just being there. I could totally relate to that,
Right.
but I didn't have a father that could pull me to the side to make me feel that way. So that's
Right.
why I took the approach I did with him, because while I never took boxing, I could totally empathize with the idea of, hey, what if I'm not good enough right now?
Right.
I
And it may
get
be
that
and you said there was a girl boxing, like
feeling.
that would have been taken a lot different. I mean,
Yeah.
you would have either been afraid to fight her because if you fought her, you can't lose to her. Whereas kids today, maybe that wouldn't be such a negative
It
losing
was.
to her.
It was.
Well, that's what I'm thinking.
It
Because I
was.
mean, like there's you come home with that, you
He'll
know.
never watch this show, but I'm not trying to embarrass him and tell his
Wow.
teeth. But yes, it was an interesting
Okay.
moment.
Okay. All right. Well, I remember I was not a very good kid on one instance because I thought this person is being a certain type of way with me, and it was a female, and I was like, there's no way I can go home and say this woman stole my jacket. So I did, I was a little kid, third grade or whatever. I was not very nice to her, and I got my jacket back. And and when they were trying to get me in trouble for it, I said, well, she was taking my jacket. So I had, there's no way that was gonna happen. And it was like, oh, okay. And it was like, that would never happen today. What I did then and the way I behaved then would have never been accepted in today's
Yeah.
world. And rightly so, by the way, and rightly so. However, the whole physical nature of who we were and who we are today is very different. I think that younger people today have a blessing of being able to uh, do a lot more mentally than we did. We were very impulsive physically. We were everything was it seemed to be physical, and nobody cared what we had to say. Nobody cared about how we were feeling. It was just physical, 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 physical. That I don't think that was the right way either. If it was the right way, then all the people that went to prison shouldn't have been in prison, right? Because they all got beaten, yet they all still
Sure.
went to prison, right? So clearly, physical violence didn't prevent anybody from doing stuff. But I'm not so sure that the pendulum didn't get swung too far the other direction now, right? Meaning, you can't accept everybody's emotions as it's okay to have them. Sometimes it's not always okay to have certain emotions. You got to be challenged a little bit in that emotion, just a little bit. Now I can understand that you're having it, but how long you want to stay in it and what you want to do with that emotion is where the challenge should come in to play, right? There's no reason to stay in any singular emotion without working to get out of that emotion. The longer you sit in any kind of emotion, the more dangerous that emotion becomes in your life. It becomes solid. It becomes concrete. Like you leave wet concrete, what happens? It gets solid. If a twig is in there, what happens? That twig stays in there. So any kind of thing that could be harmful to your future, we as older people have to challenge you with it. It's a mandatory situation. Or let's take age out of it. Even if it was me, if I'm in pain and you can help me, Trinity, if you're further along on a path or a certain process of something I need to be on, then I need to be able to listen to you and you help guide me out of there. Because if I get stuck with certain ways of dealing with certain problems, the way I've always dealt with certain problems, and don't take your guidance, then I'm going to get stuck always acting that way in that problem. And if that problem doesn't get resolved and it always ends up being bigger than it was, what am I going to gain out of it? Then I'm going to be 80, 90 years old and still be the exact same way. Because that's
Right.
exactly what's going to happen. You have to always be water, right? You have to always be malleable. You always have to be adapting. You always have to be learning. You always have to be teachable. And I think that is the lesson of the day. It's not my way. It's our way. This is a we deal. This is a we situation. This whole world is made out of a bunch of we's, not me's. You know, you could be in your little me all day long and my all day long, but all that means is you have some some self-esteem issues, and maybe you haven't found the right mentors. Maybe you got lied to by some people that were very close to you, and you got closed off early on, and you felt like you couldn't trust people, that you couldn't believe in people. But I can assure you that if you could be believed in and you could be trusted, well, then that means somebody else out there has to be able to be trustworthy. You can't be the only trustworthy person in the world. You can't be the only person in the world that cares. There's other people that care. You just got to find those people and learn to trust. Because if you just close yourself off and it all has to be generated naturally from you, this could be a very sad and painful existence. And it already has enough sadness and horrible moments in it. We need some moments of joy as well.
I'll second that.
All right. Well, good afternoon, fellas. He says that's Leo Rhines, all the way from St. Louis, joining us on Facebook Live. Thank you very much, brother. All right, Trinity, close us off. Let's final words from the Dharma guy, so we can end this radio show for the day.
Yeah, man. I'd say, when it comes to history, if you don't learn from it, it does repeat itself. Look back on history. A lot of the things that you think are new or unique, they're really not that new or unique. It's kind of the same concept, just repeating itself. So I think we do have to learn from it. And the other thing I would say is the whole my way thing. If somebody's giving you wisdom, it's not necessarily their way, right? Like, it's the way. It's something that they learned. Like, they didn't create it; they just learned from it and they're passing it. So it's not like their thing. So we can learn from everybody, man, including our history.
Right on. And be careful not to overjudge your mentors, and that your mentors don't have to be perfect in all ways. In other words, the person that you get your financial wisdom from doesn't have be the same person you're getting your relationship information from, and vice versa. The same person that's giving you great relationship advice may not be your financial advisor. So in other words, you're allowed to appreciate one item from somebody or one aspect of somebody and let them mentor you in that process without having to accept them completely as a whole. That's normal. That's normal world. You know what I mean? What I like about Florida is not the same things that I like about California. What I like about California is not necessarily the same things I like about Florida. I'm allowed to like both places for very different reasons. It doesn't have to be, this is better, this is better. No, they all have their good stuff about it. And you have to appreciate. It's harder to find good things about California recently, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. No, I love the weather in California. I'll always love the weather in California. It's always great. It's got a whole different vibe and energy there sometimes, which is really cool. But at the same time, there's a lot of things about Florida I didn't used to like, and now I love it. There's so much, there's a lot of freedom here and stuff that I appreciate. So anyway, pretty much done. We're going to kick it back to the studio over there at WOKB 1680 and 100.7 FM on the dial. Yes, Trinity, the dial, because some people may still have a dial in their vehicle. Or could somebody be listening on the boombox right now? You think somebody's listening on the boombox?
I don't think they even make those anymore, do they?
But what if somebody's like real retro?
That'd be cool.
All right.
Cool. That was like the thing to have in my bedroom when I was a kid, man.
Okay. Well, you ready to take us out?
Yep.
All right. Adios, amigos. It's time for a taco. Goodbye.